Okay, you have your goals set. And one of those goals was to get good grades, and I hope everyone wants to get the best grade that they can. But how do we obtain those good grades, right? How do some students do it and some don't, right? There are a lot of different methods in being able to do that. I'm going to kind of go through some ways and things that you should think about to obtain good grades. So one thing is, how much time should you plan on studying per class each week, right? Um, and what I would say is your book says that it says about 2 hours per class for a book, right? It says about 2 hours. In reality, most engineering classes, it's really about 3 hours per class, right? So that's a lot more than what the book says. So in reality, it says it's about 3. This particular class, it's an introduction to engineering, maybe closer to 2. But in the future, I would say your engineering classes are really 3 hours each per credit hour. So this 3 credit class would be 9 hours. And it's been shown, and it's obvious, right? The more time you spend studying, the better your grades. The other thing that seems obvious too is to go to class, right? Everyone thinks, oh, but I can just watch the recording later or whatever sometimes. But you should go to class if they're in-person classes. Or if it's an online class like this, make sure you're reading everything and watching all the videos, right? It's been shown that, of course, if you go to class, your attendance is better, that your grades go up, right? And then after class, right, reread the book. Concentrate on all sections covered in the lecture, right? Rewrite your notes, right, after class, right? And then reread your notes again. But I really think it's very important that you attend class. Even if you're like this person just kind of sleeping there in class. I know there were classes that I went to at 7:45 when I was getting my engineering degree that I kind of slept through many times. My notes and my classes kind of went like this, went nice, and then kind of drifted off, right, off to nowhere. But I know I was getting some information out of class. So I think it's very important that you do go to class to get as much information as you can. Sometimes there's little hints that come along. So how do you make class effective? So now you're going to class. How do you make that time effective? One thing is to be prepared. And what does that mean to be prepared? Make sure that you can see the board, one thing, right? Being prepared would be reading everything before class, right? Being up close enough so you can see the board. Ask questions when you don't understand something. Some people are always embarrassed thinking, oh, am I the only one that doesn't understand it? Typically, there's a lot of other people that don't understand it if you don't understand it. And as a faculty member, I am much happier if you would ask me questions, right? Then I know what I need to explain better, right? So how can I make myself better so you learn better? And that's part of my goal. So ask questions, right? So the other thing you should do is take effective notes. And how do you do that, right? One thing is to really skim the reading prior to class. You should have already read it once, but kind of reread it to know what the lecture is going to be about. And then you're going to just capture those key points about the lecture itself. And also, if there were things in the reading you didn't understand, you can concentrate your listening efforts on those things and ask those questions when that comes up. Review your notes after class and add more material to it. You can ask other students what they got out of it also, and add more information that way. They may have gotten different notes. Another key thing is to work as many problems as you can. This is in all your sciences and maths and engineering type thing, right? And all of these areas, we typically assign a minimum number of problems, 5 problems or whatever. But the back of the book or that chapter of the book has 20, 30 problems in it. Yeah, you don't have time to do all of it, but the more that you can do, the better you will be at it, right? You'll become much more efficient at doing those problems. You'll see all the different types of problem variants and all the different variables and ways that problems can be set up and can be solved, right? And you'll, again, become much more efficient, which is very important when it comes to exams because a lot of times in these areas of math, science, and engineering, the exams are very, there's a lot of problems for the amount of time, and you have to be very efficient and try and finish your exam as quickly as you can. Also, it solidifies really these concepts in your head a lot better. So again, I can't stress enough to do more and more problems. Another thing that would be helpful is to form study groups. And I'm hoping with this class that you, as you start working on your projects and things, you will kind of get a study group even through this online area, right? So you find people that you can work with and study with. I think that's very important. So some tips for study groups. One is to prepare individually before you meet with the whole group. Kind of know what you, find out what you know, and maybe some areas where you can ask other people questions. Do not ever copy anyone's work. Don't also ever give anyone your work and say, here, take a look at it and give it back to me when you're done. That too is a form of copying. So do not do that, because that will go into this whole academic misconduct type area. Do not do that. But you can ask for help. You could say to someone, what did you get on a problem? And you could say, I got, 500 newtons, right? What did you get? Oh, I got 450 newtons. And you can then explain to each other how you got those problems, right? But don't copy someone else's work. Kind of learn from each other. That's the beauty of the study group. Work out your problems individually first, and then explain your answers to other people, learning and helping each other. That is the beauty of it, and that's how you will be able to understand your concepts a lot better. Also, find a good place to meet, right? Somewhere it's quiet, maybe a place that has a whiteboard. Sometimes there's an empty classroom. Find some good place to meet. Maybe it's even online in some virtual room. Get a good study location, right? Like I just talked about, that's quiet for you individually, right? So look for a quiet location. Maybe it's your bedroom, maybe it's not. Maybe it's some other room in the house, or maybe it's a library or somewhere else, right? Get very few distractions. You don't want to have to get up every so often to just kind of see what's going on or watch TV or things like that. Get rid of the phone. Boy, is that a big distraction, right? You don't have to know what everyone's texting at that moment. Wait for a while, study for half an hour and then check your phone, right? Put it away. You will find yourself being much, much, much more efficient. Now, the no music one that's very debatable. A lot of people use music to listen to, and I've always kind of said, no, you shouldn't have music. I cannot study or work by having music in the background. I find it is very disruptive. Now, I know my son, who has very high anxieties, finds that the music that he listens to is, doesn't have anything that's like a singing type thing that he would go along with. It's something completely different. And it actually works for him. So I'm not going to say no completely to it, as I've often done in the past. But make sure that it's not distracting type music. Multitasking doesn't work. Pick one task at a time and do it, right? That kind of goes with the music because your head's kind of multitasking. But for some people, it does work. All right. So now that we have a place to work, how do we do well on tests? Well, one thing, of course, is test preparation. We need to make sure that we are prepared for the test by reviewing our notes on what we wrote down, reviewing lectures, right? If you've got recorded lectures like this, you could go back and review those. You could review your homework. You could do extra problems, of course, right? That goes back to doing more and more problems. That will help you, right? Those are great things. Now you're in the room and you're taking the test, or you're online taking the test. What do you need to do to take the test and do the best that you can on the test? Have your calculator ready if you're able to use one. Have extra pencils and erasers if you need those, so you can work out your problems, right? The first thing you should do is skim the exam, right? You should look and see what the exam is going to look like, see how long it's going to, how much time you have, and kind of balance out your time. You got to make sure you get everything done. When you're skimming for it, look at the problems that have the most points and which look the easiest and which looks the hardest. One recommendation is to do the easiest problem first. A lot of people do that, and the reason for doing that is it gives you a sense of accomplishment, right? I've done something good. I'm feeling good about myself. I can go on and do the next, and I'll do well with the exam. And this works really, really well for a lot of people. I was an odd duck. I kind of worked backwards, and I always started with the last problem first in most of my engineering exams because those were the hardest. And I found out that if I did the hardest one first, I could do really well with the rest. And if I couldn't get that hard problem, I would kind of keep going backwards, and I know my mind was kind of thinking about that problem. And when I would come back to it, it would be okay. So it's just a matter of your preference, but using the easy problem first is a great way of doing it. Also, keeping track of time, right? You don't want to spend all your time on problems that have very, very few points. You want to make sure you get as many points as you can on your exam, right? Concentrate on the problems that will give you the most points. That's extremely important. Don't leave those completely to the end. And then check over your work before handing it in, right? A lot of people will just hand it in as soon as they're done. But go over and recheck it. I was a superstitious kind of person, and I always would never hand in my exam first, even though I knew I was the first one done sometimes. I would hang on to it till I was like maybe in the middle of the class, right? Because maybe why did I get it done so soon, right? Is it because I really was prepared? Maybe, but maybe I missed something. So I go back and check and check. And last, if there's a few things that kind of make you feel comfortable, like a lucky rabbit's foot or a certain pencil, bring that along, or lucky socks, right? Whatever makes you feel comfortable, even if you have these weird superstitions. And I always kind of wondered, this lucky rabbit's foot idea. I don't know why that's used because it doesn't seem like the rabbit is very lucky in this case. All right. I hope this helps you some. The next section, we're going to talk about time management.